Assalamu alaikum everyone. Inshallah, we'll be starting the program tonight for the Shahadat of Bibi Fatima. Whenever you're ready, brother, you can start the Quran.
صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad.
اللهم صل على محمد.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. By the way, I'm reading Surah Al-Insan.
Okay, thank you.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. هل أتى على الإنسان حين من الدهر لم يكن شيئا مذكورا. إنا خلقنا الإنسان من نطفة أمشاج نبتليه فجعلناه سميعا بصيرا. إنا هديناه السبيل إما شاكرا وإما كفورا. إنا أعتدنا للكافرين سلاسل وأغلالا وسعيرا. إن الأبرار يشربون من كأس كان مزاجها كافورا. عينا يشرب بها عباد الله يفجرونها تفجيرا. يوفون بالنذر ويخافون يوما كان شره مستطيرا. ويطعمون الطعام على حبه مسكينا ويتيما وأسيرا. إنما نطعمكم لوجه الله إنما نطعمكم لوجه الله لا نريد منكم جزاء ولا شكورا. إنا نخاف من ربنا يوما عبوسا قمطريرا. فوقاهم الله شر ذلك ذلك اليوم ولقاهم نضرة وسرورا وجزاهم بما صبروا جنة وحريرا متكئين فيها على الأرائك لا يرون فيها شمسا ولا زمهريرا ودانية عليهم ظلالها وذللت قطوفها تذليلا ويطاف عليهم بآنية من فضة وأكواب كانت قوارير من فضة قدروها تقديرا ويسقون فيها كأسا كان مزاجها زنجبيلا عينا فيها تسمى سلسبيلا ويطوف عليهم ولدان مخلدون إذا رأيتهم حسبتهم لؤلؤا منثورا وإذا رأيت ثم رأيت نعيما وملكا كبيرا عاليهم ثياب سندس خضر واستبرق وحلوا أساور من فضة وسقاهم ربهم شرابا طهورا إن هذا كان لكم جزاء وكان سعيكم مشكورا إنا نحن نزلنا عليك القرآن تنزيلا فاصبر لحكم ربك ولا تطع منهم آثما أو كفورا واذكر اسم ربك بكرة وأصيلا فاصبر لحكم ربك ولا تطع منهم آثما أو كفورا واذكر اسم ربك بكرة وأصيلا صدق الله العلي العظيم. الفاتحة مع الصلوات.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Thank you so much, Brother Abdullah, for the beautiful recitation. Inshallah, we'll be continuing with the program. I would like to invite Brother Mehdi for a short poetry.
صلى الله عليكم يا أهل بيت النبوة وموضع الرسالة. از بیت آل طه آتش کشد زبانه، گویی شده قیامت بر پادران خانه. از بیت آل طه آتش کشد زبانه، گویی شده قیامت بر پادران خانه. برپاس شور محشر از عطرت پیمبر، خلقند مات و مبهوت از گردش زمانه، از گردش زمانه. اهریمنان نمودند خون قلب مصطفی را، در منظر خلایق بی جرم و بی بهانه. در پشت در فتاده هم الائمه از پا، دارد فغان ز دشمن آن گوهر یگانه. زینب به ناله گوید کشتند مادرم را، این یک ز ضرب سیلی آن یک ز تازیانه. این یک ز ضرب سیلی آن یک ز تازیانه. در خون فتاد زهرا چون مرغ نیم بسمل، محسن فتاده چون گل هر پرده را ستانه. محسن فتاده چون گل هر پرده را ستانه. در پشت زانوی غم پژمان نشسته حیدر، مانده حسین مظلوم حیران در آن میانه. مانده حسین مظلوم حیران در آن میانه. از نقش خون و دیوار پرسد ز حال زهرا، وز زخم سینه گیرد از میخ در نشانه. دارد حسن شکایت از کینه مغیره، ریزد ز دیدگانش یاقوت دانه دانه. ریزد ز دیدگانش یاقوت دانه دانه. با پهلوی شکسته چون مرغ پال بسته، زهرا به خون نشسته در کنج آشیانه. با پهلوی شکسته چون مرغ بال بسته زهرا به خون نشسته در کنج آشیانه صلوات.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Now for the Urdu poetry, we have Brother Pervez.
कहते हैं ज़हरा के लाल अम्मा बुला लो हमें गम से है दिल पायमाल अम्मा बुला लो हमें कहते हैं ज़हरा के लाल अम्मा बुला लो हमें नाना भी सर पर नहीं आप भी अब चल बसी नाना भी सर पर नहीं आप भी अब चल बसी बाबा है महजू कमाल अम्मा बुला लो हमें कहते थे ज़हरा के लाल अम्मा बुला लो हमें इतना भी कोई नहीं पूछे कि क्यों हो हज़ीं इतना भी कोई नहीं पूछे कि क्यों हो हज़ीं किससे कहें हम ये हाल अम्मा बुला लो हमें कहते थे ज़हरा के लाल अम्मा बुला लो हमें कुर्तों को अमामों को कोई नहीं धोए जो कुर्तों को अमामों को कोई नहीं धोए जो आप ही को था ख्याल अम्मा बुला लो हमें कहते थे ज़हरा के लाल अम्मा बुला लो हमें गर्द से जुल्फें तमाम अट गई अनेक नाम गर्द से जुल्फें तमाम अट गई अनेक नाम जिंदगी है अब वहाँ अम्मा बुला लो हमें कहते थे ज़हरा के लाल अम्मा बुला लो हमें देखो तो उठ कर जरा खाने का वक्त आ चुका देखो तो उठ कर जरा खाने का वक्त आ चुका भूख से दिल है निढाल अम्मा बुला लो हमें कहते थे ज़हरा के लाल अम्मा बुला लो हमें टुकड़े न हो दिल भला उसकी मती वजह क्या टुकड़े न हो दिल भला उसकी मती वजह क्या सुन के ये गम का मकाल अम्मा बुला लो हमें कहते थे ज़हरा के लाल अम्मा बुला लो हमें गम से है दिल पायमाल अम्मा बुला लो हमें
Jazakallah. Thank you so much, Brother Mehdi. Thank you so much, Brother Pervez. Inshallah, without further ado, let's invite Sheikh Jafar for tonight's speech. Please recite a salawat. Allahumma salli ala
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله الذي جعل الحمد مفتاحا لذكره وسببا للمزيد من فضله ودليلا على آلائه وعظمته. ثم الصلاة والسلام على خير خلقه سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين، لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين، أرواحنا له فداء. أما بعد، فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ضرب الله مثلا للذين كفروا امرأة نوح وامرأة لوط كانتا تحت عبدين من عبادنا صالحين فخانتاهما فلم يغنيا عنهما من الله شيئا وقيل ادخلا النار مع الداخلين. وضرب الله مثلا للذين آمنوا امرأة فرعون إذ قالت رب ابن لي عندك بيتا في الجنة ونجني من فرعون وعمله ونجني من القوم الظالمين. صدق الله العلي العظيم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. First and foremost, I give my condolences to all of you on the occasion we are commemorating, and that is the Shahadat of Fatima Zahra, salamullah alayha. This, like our previous event when we were discussing actually the birth of Lady Zainab al-Kubra, salamullah alayha, is an opportunity once again to examine the status of women in Islam and the role that women play in the mission of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And I want to do this by virtue of two verses, and these are verse 10 and 11 of Surah Al-Tahrim, so chapter 66 of the Quran, verse 10 and 11. And perhaps, given the context of the verses, and particularly the first verse, verse 10 of Surah Al-Tahrim, one may question how do we understand the status of
sorry to
women
interrupt
in
you,
Islam?
but we have some background noise. There's a lot of background noise.
Can you mute everybody?
Yes, everyone is mute. Sorry.
Perhaps it is a question that how do we understand the status of women, particularly from verse 10 of Surah Al-Tahrim, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He gives the example of the wives of the Prophet Nuh and the Prophet Lut. And also, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He begins that verse, ضَرَبَ اللَّهُ مَثَلًا لِلَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا. That this is an example for those who disbelieve. And what is this example? What is this parable that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given? And that is found in these two women of the Prophet. The wife of the Prophet Nuh, or actually one of the wives of Prophet Nuh, by the name of Rabi'ah. She was one who considered the Prophet Nuh, or she would just go around, she would say that he was crazy. Again, the Prophet Nuh was living in a place where it was dry in a desert, and so he was commanded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to build an ark because there will be a flood. And so, of course, many of the people who the Prophet Nuh himself was calling towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to eventually to board the ark when the flood would come, they thought he was crazy, and this was emphasized by one of his wives by the name of Rabi'ah. And so this was her betrayal, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he points out in verse 10 that Khanata, that these two wives, the wife of Noah and the wife of Lut, they betrayed him. They betrayed these prophets. With regards to the wife of the prophet Lut, her betrayal was in how she interacted with the guest or those folks who came to the house of the prophet Lut. And this is from what we understand within the tafasir or the commentaries on this particular verse. They said that her interaction was not appropriate. It was almost as if it was flirtatious. دلت عليهم على أضياف. So she kind of flirted with them or spoke just very frank and with them. And this is one of the things that we should also know, as the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he stated that there was no wife of the Prophet. None of the wives of the Prophet ever cheated on the Prophet. But this action of the wife of the Prophet Lut was something that was inappropriate. And of course, when the adab and the punishment came down on the people of Lut, of course, as the Quran also explains, that she turned back, looking toward it, having some sort of empathy for those whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had stricken with punishment. And he said, this is why he told the Prophet Lut to leave from his place, to leave out along with his family, along with his followers, because those people will be punished. And the prophet's wife, she turned back, and according to some of the accounts, that she turned into a pillar of salt. She was also destroyed along with that. Also within the riwayat as well, it mentions that Rabi'ah, this wife of Noah, who betrayed him by also emphasizing and going along that, yes, he's crazy, that he doesn't know what he's talking about, that she also was one of those individuals that did not board the ark with the Prophet Noah, according to some of the accounts of this. And this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in the end of verse 10, states, وَقِيلَ دُخُلَ النَّارَ that they will also enter into the hellfire. They were also punished as those who disbelieved were punished. Because this quality of al-khiyana, betrayal, it is one of the qualities of disbelief, in fact. When we look towards the teachings of Ahlul Bayt alayhim afdalus salatu wasalam, we find that Imam Ali alayhi afdalus salatu wasalam, he speaks about this idea and concept of khiyana. He says, al-khiyanatu akhul kadhib. So the brother of betrayal and treachery is lying. And what the wives of these prophets, what they belied and what they lied about was that message that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had sent to the prophets. They disbelieved in it. They did not accept it wholeheartedly. They did not follow that path that the prophets had set forth. You know, although, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states, that they were under the, you could say, supervision, they were under, supposedly under the guidance of these abdeen salihin, these two righteous servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But their betrayal is like their rejection of whatever the prophets they brought. And this is one of the worst sins. As Imam Ali he says, sharru ma'siyah. That khiyana is sharru ma'siyah. And likewise, this quality of khiyana as well. It shows that a person, according to some of the teachings of Imam Ali, qillat al-wara', that they lack humility and they lacked faith, adam al-diyana. So these are all of the, or at least some of the qualities of khiyana. The Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in order for us to understand khiyana, and also to examine how we can understand from these two verses, from verse 10 and verse 11 of Surah At-Tahrim, the status of women in Islam, and particularly the status of women around the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the Prophet has been recorded or ascribed to have said, "Alamatul kha'in arba." So there are 4 signs of a person who is a kha'in, who is someone who betrays another person. So these 4 signs are Isyanur Rahman, to disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to disobey the most merciful, which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The second is Adal Jiran, to harm or to bother one's neighbor, to, again, that neighbor who is always perhaps bothersome, who's perhaps poking at the other neighbor, or just simply doing things which will annoy their neighbor. The third quality is Bughdul Aqran, to detest or to dislike those people who are, you could say, Aqran, who are close to them, those individuals who are relatives or family members, or has some sort of close relationship or association with that person, that they dislike them, or they anger them, or they do things which, again, does not help develop a healthy and a wholesome relationship. The fourth quality or sign of the kha'in, as the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he points out, he says, "Al-qurbu ila tughyan," to be close to or to be attached to tyranny. In other words, that person has no care or about oppression, and doesn't see anything wrong with it. In fact, they make relationships with those who are oppressors. When we examine the story of the Prophet Noah and the Prophet Lut, and particularly in the next verse, when we will come to that, in verse 11 of Surah At-Tahrim, the wife of Fir'aun, La'asiyah, then we begin to understand these signs. Asyanur Rahman, of course, if the wives of the Prophet are not following their guidance, they're disobeying them, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala points out with Rabi'ah, the wife of Noah, and also with the wife of Lut, Asyanur Rahman. Wa Ada'ul Jiran, that they were bothering and annoying the neighbors. And this is particularly seen in the wife of Lut. Wa Bughdul Aqran, that when we examine that, again, the Aqran, or the people who they were close to, were the prophets Noah and the prophet Lut. And of course, I'm sure that they were annoyed by the actions of these women who are their wives. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he had mentioned in the Quran, and slightly before these particular verses, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, he calls out to the believers, "Qu anfusikum wa ahlikum nara," to save yourselves and to save your family from the hellfire. So if this is the mission of the Anbiya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to save themselves from the punishment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to save their families from the punishment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then of course, if these women who were their wives were not following that guidance, this will be something that would make them upset. It would be something that, again, they would not be happy with. And we see this very clearly in the story of the Prophet Noah, that when his son did not board the ark, and he saw his son from a distance, and he began to call out to his son to board the ark, his son said, I'll just go to the high mountain. And it was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who revealed to Noah, he says that, look, yes, we promise to save you and your family and your followers, but your son, he says, he's not from among you. He is not amal al-khair. He is not a good, he himself, he embodies the, what you call amal su. He embodies disbelief. So therefore, he's not among you. But that very question that Nuh he had with regards to his son shows that he was displeased with the son of his, who was close with him, close in his association, again, his offspring. And likewise, when the prophets, they operate by that command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to save themselves and to save their family, and their family member does not follow that path, then of course they will be displeased with that. وَقُرْبُ إِلَى الطُّغْيَانِ. قُرْبُ إِلَى الطُّغْيَانِ, to have association with, to be close to tyranny. And this example is very clear in the story of Lut. Of course, with Rabia, as well as some of the Rawayat mentioned that she did not board the ship. Again, she decided to stay with the disbelievers. But the wife of Lut as well, again, on her way out, because according to the orations, the accounts of her, that she began to leave from the town with Lut and with the other believers. But yet her heart felt heavy that, oh, well, why are these people being punished? She had doubt about what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had promised. And that promise was to save the believers and to punish the disbelievers. And so therefore, no matter that these two women, or even the son of Noah, if we want to include him as well, that when they are with a prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the prophet, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَلَمْ يُغْنِيَا عَنْهُمَا مِنَ اللَّهِ شَيْئًا. فَلَمْ يُغْنِيَا, meaning that these prophets, meaning the prophet Noah and the prophet Lut, that they did not avail those women. لَمْ يُغْنِيَا عَنْهُمَا مِنَ اللَّهِ شَيْئًا. They did not avail those women against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in one bit. Meaning that simply because they had an association or relationship with the Prophet of Allah, with a person who was righteous in their lives, that did not save them. They were not saved by that. So what we come to understand is that godliness or righteousness is not simply by family association. And when we understand this, then we can begin to understand that how these verses speak about the status of women. Because no woman around the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, their status and their greatness is simply by being related to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Their status is based on their own merit. Just as we see in the wife of Fir'aun, that again, she's living in the house of a tyrant, but yet she refuses to follow the tyranny of Fir'aun. She disagrees with his action. She disagrees with those people who follow Fir'aun. And this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He makes her the example for the believers. وَضَرَبَ اللَّهُ مَثَلًا لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا امْرَأَةَ فِرْعَوْنَ. So Fir'aun's wife is the example for the believers. Meaning that person who has full faith and conviction and iman, even if they're in a situation that is difficult, is in a situation where they're surrounded by disbelief, the strength of their iman will shine. And this is the example of the wife of Fir'aun. And she, according to many of the commentaries on this particular verse, she calls out to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And what is interesting, they point out, many of the Mufassirin, they said that Asiya, she developed a personal relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And her dua shows that connection that she has with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. إِذْ قَالَتْ رَبِّ ابْنِ لِي عِنْدَكَ بَيْتًا فِي الْجَنَّةِ. That, oh Allah, build for me a home, a palace, a house in paradise. وَنَجِّنِي مِنْ فِرْعَوْنِ وَعَمَلِي. And save me from Fir'aun and the actions of Fir'aun. وَنَجِّنِي مِنَ الْقَوْمِ الظَّالِمِينَ, and save me from the oppressive people, this nation that is oppressive, meaning those individuals who are following Fir'aun. So these are the two things that we see in Asiya, the wife of Fir'aun. And what we will see that the women, no matter what their familiar relationship is, that if they are related to someone who is just, who is upright, who is righteous, then that does not save them. Or if they're in the family of someone who is just, upright, and righteous, like the Anbiya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then their merit is not based upon that association, but rather upon their own merit. And that merit will come through their connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If we use the example of Asiya, through their connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then through their in their stance for justice and against injustice. And if this is part of that criterion to understand the status of women, then when we look at Fatima Zahra salamullah alayha, then we can magnify her greatness a thousandfold. Because when we look at that connection that Fatima Zahra salamullah alayha, she had with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it is one that is exemplary. There's no match to that connection that Fatima Zahra salamullah alayha, she had with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if we look towards the du'as of Fatima Zahra, and du'as is, as we mentioned before in some other lectures, this is a type of communication with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He, through revelation, He speaks with us, He requires from us, like in our ibadah, certain actions. And how do we reciprocate that communication with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Through our du'a? Through supplicating to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when we read or we examine the du'as of Fatima Zahra salamullah alayha, and we discover this connection that she had with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and how she understood Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In one of those du'as, Fatima Zahra salamullah alayha, she says, Allahumma qad tara makani wa tasma' kalami wa tattali' ala amri. That, oh Allah, that you're the one who sees my state. And you hear my speech. And you're aware of all of my actions. This shows the consciousness of Fatima Zahra salamullah alayha, that at no point is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala disconnected from His servants. At no point can we say that, well, I can say something, I can do something, or I can be in a place that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is unaware of me and my actions and what I say and what I do, or how I even interact with others. This is something that Allah said, that's Fatima Zahra salamullah alayhi, she's conscious of at each and every moment. But what I want to do is point to one of the du'as of Fatima Zahra salamullah alayha that is pretty much comprehensive, especially when we look at the examples that we've been given before, those women who were who betrayed the Prophet of Allah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the prophets of Allah, Prophet Nuh and the Prophet Lut. That what was their example? And then also the example of Asiya, that she was someone who built a relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. She stood firmly against the injustice of Fir'aun. And we see this in not only the actions of Fatima Zahra salamullah alayha, but even in her dua. And one of the du'as that is attributed to Fatima Zahra salamullah alayha, she states, Alhamdulillah alladhi lam yaj'alni kafiran li'an'umi. And this is pretty much a praise that she gives of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala within the dua. Alhamdulillah alladhi lam yaj'alni kafiran li'an'umi wa la jahidan li fadli fala khayru fihi wa huwa ahlu وَالْحَمْدُ لِلَّهِ عَلَى حُجَّتِهِ الْبَالِغَةِ عَلَى جَمِيعِ مَنْ خَلَقَ. So she begins by giving praise to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who did not make her disbelieve or kafiran li'an'umih. So she did not reject the ni'am of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so one aspect of kufr, and this is what Fatima Zahra salamu alayha, she's pointing to in this part of the dua and part of this praise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is that one aspect of kufr, of disbelief, is kufranun ni'mah, to reject the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to reject the revelation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to reject the guidance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to to reject and refuse to understand that one's life and everything that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us is from the ni'am of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's from the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So she says that, oh, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He did not make me kafiran li'an'umih, wala jahidan lifadlih, and not someone who opposes the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so first we have to understand what is the difference between ni'mah and fadl. So ni'mah, again, is the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He gives to His creation. Life in itself is a blessing. And then fadl is something that is given in excess. Something that is given in excess to give more. And quite often, as it is explained within the riwayat of Ahlul Bayt, alayhim afdal salatu wasalam, the fadl of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given, though that servant is not deserving. Meaning that they did not do anything in order to that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given that fadl, that grace. And when we think of this, subhanallah, this is showing the ma'rifah and the connection of Ahlul Bayt, particularly Fatima Zahra salamu alayha, where she says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not make her, in other words, she's understanding all that is which the ni'mat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He has given to her, and then whatever He has given them in excess of that blessing, in excess of that ni'mah. So a fadl is kind of, you could say, compound blessings, or those things which are extra. And when we look at the life of Fatima Zahra salamu alayha, and we try to understand that what are the ni'mas that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave her. And of course, we cannot count all of those blessings that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given to Fatima Zahra. And what is that which is extra? Again, we cannot count that as well. But nonetheless, what we see is that Fatima Zahra salamu alayha, one of the ni'mah is that, yeah, she's the daughter of Rasulullah. Although, again, as we said, her connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is on her own merit. And she is the wife of Amir al-Mu'mineen, the mother of Al-Hasan al-Hussein, the mother of Zainab al-Kubra, and Kulthum. That all of these are among the ni'mat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That she is in a household which is connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is something that if we have also been giving that blessing, that ni'mah, to be in a household that is wholesome, to be in a household where, again, the mother, father, the children, all of those people who are around us are connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, striving towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is one of the greatest ni'mah and blessings that we've been given. And this is also something that the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he points towards in one of the riwayat that he mentions when someone asks him about himself as compared to other anbiya, prophets of Allah. And so one of the things he mentions, he says that one of the blessings that he has is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed him with a wife that was supportive and backed him. And he mentions, he says, unlike the wife of the Prophet Lut. In other words, to be in a household of mu'mineen is a ni'mah. And I've seen some households, and unfortunately, that where one of the, you could say, spouses believes, the other doesn't, or their iman is shaky. It creates a very tumultuous type of relationship. The household becomes unstable. The children also are affected. So this is one of the ni'mah that we can see that Fatima salam alayha, she had to be in that household of Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. Because while the merit of one's greatness is upon themselves, that support is definitely important. And if one does not have that type of household, again, one refers back to a community. One looks towards others to help support them, to look for inspiration in order to make their connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is among the ni'mat of Fatima Zahra, and of course among the fadl and the fadilat of Fatima Zahra, those things which are extra, is perhaps, again, we cannot count those and really understand what are those things that Fatima Zahra salam alayha, she is mentioning by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He has graced her with what she perceives is, again, more than what she perhaps deserves, or more than, or more blessings than she can even perceive. And perhaps that is as we see in the rawayat that Fatima Zahra salam alayha, that one of her, you could say, fadilats, or one of those things that she has been graced with, is that on Yawm al-Qiyamah, that she will be able to give shafa'ah for the believers, for those who followed and they were supporting her family, her Ahlul Bayt alayhim afdalus wasalam, those who, again, sacrificed themselves, like for the Ahlul Bayt, those who stood up in defense of Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad, that she would have this ability to do shafa'ah for them. So then Fatima, she states, فَلَا خَيْرُ فِيهِ وَهُوَ أَهْلُ. And this dua, that good and all goodness is in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. She emphasizes this also in another one of her du'as, and subhanAllah, one of the, I would say, very beautiful but powerful du'as. And this is the dua that Fatima Zahra salam alayha, that we have, that is attributed to Fatima Zahra salam alayha, with regards to a dua against those who oppressed Fatima Zahra. And towards the end of that dua, she calls upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. She says, Ya fa'ila kulli khair. Again, when she's requesting that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives her support for her against those people who were oppressing her. Again, the dua begins so that we will, you'll understand. It begins like, Ya alim al-ghayb wa sara'ir. And she calls out and to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, calling upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who is Ka'ila Fir'auna li Musa, who protected the prophets against their enemies, who turned Fir'aun's, you could say, plot against Fir'aun, versus having that plot of Fir'aun affecting Musa. Ya munja Isa min aida dhalama, the one who has saved the Prophet Isa from the hands of those who are oppressors. وَيَا مُخَلِّصَ قَوْمِ نُوحٍ مِنَ الْغَرَقِ, the one who has saved, again, the followers of Nuh from being drowned. And at the end she says, Ya fa'ila kulli khair. Again, this is her understanding of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one who does all good. Ya hadiyan ila kulli khair, the one who guides towards all good. وَيَا دَالًا عَلَى كُلِّ خَيْرٍ, the one who indicates towards all good. وَيَا آمِرًا بِكُلِّ خَيْرٍ وَيَا خَالِقَ الْخَيْرِ, the one who commands towards good and the one who creates good. يَا أَهْلَ الْخَيْرِ, and the one who is Again, who is khair? Who's Ahlul Khair himself? So Fatima Zahra, she understands that whatever happens, whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He again puts forth for His creation, or even those tests that He tests His creations by, that these are khair. And now we understand that why Zainab salamullah alayha, that when she was asked, what do you think that about what happened to your family? She says, وَمَا رَأَيْتُ إِلَّا خَيْرًا. I didn't see anything but good. I saw nothing but good. The foundation of that is Fatima Zahra salamullah alayha. This is what Fatima Zahra salamullah alayha, she instilled in her children. She instilled it in Zainab salamullah alayha. And so that dua that we were speaking about, where that's Fatima Zahra, she says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is khair, and in Him is good, and all good is from Him. She ends it by saying, Alhamdulillah, thanking and praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Walhamdulillah alladhi, walhamdulillah ala hujjatihi al-baligha, ala jami'i man khalaq. So she prays and she thanks Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the greatest hujjah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the greatest proof of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed over all of His creation. Now when we ask that, what is this hujjatul baligh? Quite often in the books of our ulama, you will find that one meaning of this hujjatul baligh is the aql, is the intellect of mankind, the ability to reason. They say that this is hujjatullah al-baligh. Why? Because that hujjatullah al-baligh, our ability to reason, our ability to think, will lead us back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. At least supposedly, of course, someone is well connected to their fitrah. And this is why they say that this is hujjatullah al-baligh, that we will understand by our intellect right from wrong. And by understanding right from wrong, then that should lead us towards our fitrah. Of course, if our fitrah has not been skewed and has not been deviated to the point that, again, our reasoning is not connected with our fitrah. And this happens to people. It happened, again, in the example of the wife of Nuh, Rabi'ah, and the wife of Lut. And they were there. They saw the prophets. They witnessed perhaps even the miracles of the prophets. But yet, if the intellect alone is that hujjatullah al-baligha, again, it did not avail them anything. Because perhaps their fitrah, perhaps by their own means, was skewed. And they did not follow that. But those individuals who their intellect is connected to their fitrah, like Asiya, for example, and that leads them towards what is right and to take a stance against what is wrong. Another meaning of this, and we understand this when we examine the statements of Fatima Zahra, not simply her du'as, but the khutbahs of Fatima, the khutbah of Fatima Zahra salamullah alayha, the narrations that are attributed to Fatima Zahra salamullah alayha, that Fatima Zahra, when she's praising Allah, when she's thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, alhamdulillah ala hujjatihi al-baligha, that in the statements of Fatima Zahra, she often referred to Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi wasallam as hujjatullah al-baligha. So in this dua as well, Fatima Zahra, she's not only showing her connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but she is showing her position as well against dhulm, against oppression and injustice. As we mentioned, that these are the two things that we see in verse 11 of Surah Al-Tahrim, where Asiya salam, she's asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Rabbi ibni li baytan fil jannah. So build for me a house in paradise. وَنَجِّنِي مِنْ فِرْعَوْنَ وَعَمَلِهِ وَنَجِّنِي مِنَ الْقَوْمِ الظَّالِمِينَ. And save me from Fir'aun and his actions and from the oppressive nation. So we see Fatima Zahra salamu alayha, her stance against oppression, her stance with Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi wasalam, and his rightful role as the wali of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as the one who was supposed to be Khalifatullah al-ard ba'da Rasulullah, after Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And this is why, again, Fatima Zahra salamu alayha, that she was the one who was at the forefront of the revolution. She was at the forefront of the resistance against the usurping of the wilayat of Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib. Imam Ali alayhi salatu wasalam, he was commanded by Rasulullah to stay at home and not to vie for his right or power. So the Prophet of Allah says this is his test. But Fatima Zahra salamu alayha, she was not given that task. So she stood up. She would go to every house in Medina, reminding people about the last Hajjatul Wida of Rasulullah sallallahu, reminding everyone that in that Hajj, that the Prophet of Allah, he raised the hand of Amir al-Mu'mineen and said, Man kuntu mawlahu fahada aliyun mawla. That whoever I am his master, his leader, then Imam Ali, and Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib, he is their leader. So Fatima Zahra, she took a very clear stance for justice and a clear stance against injustice. Something that, again, it revealed itself in the children of Fatima Zahra, in Imam Hassan, Imam Hussein, in Zainab al-Kubra, in Kulthum. That stance that Fatima Zahra salamu alayha, she took in opposition to those who had usurped the rights of Amir al-Mu'mineen, eventually led to her martyrdom, led to threats by those who were on the other end. That if Fatima Zahra did not stop gathering people in her home to speak about that situation, usurping of the rights of Amir al-Mu'mineen, that her house would be set on fire. It led to the event where we know that Fatima Zahra salamu alayha, that she was trapped between the door and the wall, that when the door was kicked to end upon her, that cracked her rib, that led to the shahadat of her unborn baby, Muhsin al-Shaheed. It led to the point where Fatima Zahra, in a night like this, as I stated, the eve of her martyrdom, or the night of her martyrdom, where she was lying upon her deathbed, as she called out, she began to give salutations. Assalamu alayka ya Rasul, ya Rasulullah, ya Rasul Rabbi, or the Rasul of my Lord. And when Imam Ali, he heard Fatima Zahra giving salutations in this manner, he asked her, he says, who are you giving salutations to? Fatima Zahra, she explained that she had seen Rasulullah in her dream, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam told her that he is longing for Fatima. He's longing to see Fatima, his daughter. And she said that I am longing to see you, O my father. And Rasulullah, he informed her, he says, and in this night, you will return back to me, and we will be together once more. This night, as we mourn the martyrdom of Fatima Zahra, it is also a mourning of loneliness for the family of Fatima Zahra. As one of the poets, he stated, a very beautiful poem. He said, Shabaya Fatima. It's the night of Fatima. Shabaya Fatima. وشباي غربة غمي. It is a night of Fatima, the night of loneliness and sorrow. امشب بدان قدر ما داری بدان قدر كوثر صديقية طاهرة فاطمة. It's a night that we should understand, and we should know the value of a mother. We should know the value of Fatima al-Kawthar Siddiqa Tahira. We should know the value of Fatima Zahra, because it is a night of loneliness. And but in K Shabha ya Azai Bibi Fatimast Wali Biamin Bin K Bishtar Bisuzim Baraya Ghurbat Ali. The poem says that though tonight we are mourning the martyrdom of Fatima Zahra, come and let our hearts break and let us feel the sorrow for Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib in this night. Why is it that we are feeling the sorrow and mourning the state of Amir al-Mu'mineen in this night that Fatima Zahra, that she is passing away from this world? It said that when Fatima Zahra, she had passed away, and Amir al-Mu'mineen, he had buried Fatima Zahra. It said that Amir al-Mu'mineen, he would often go to the grave of Fatima Zahra, fulfilling the wasiyah of Fatima Zahra. And what he would do, he would sit by the grave of Fatima, and he would recite the Quran, because Fatima told him, it says that, I will be there in my grave, in this realm of loneliness, and you will be alone too, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, so come and recite Quran. So one of those evenings that Imam Ali, he went and he sat at the grave of Fatima Zahra. Mawlaya kainat, apne Fatima ki qabr par gaya, aur Quran para, ab so gaya wa khab mein Fatima ko dekha. That Fatima Zahra was seen in the dream of Amir al-Mu'mineen as he sat beside the grave of Fatima Zahra. After reading Quran, he went to sleep. And when Imam Ali, he saw Fatima Zahra in his dream, Fatima Zahra, she called out to Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ya Abul Hasan, ila al-bayt, لأن زينب جلست من النوم ونظرت إلى مكاني فرأته خاليا. That Fatima Zahra, though she loved to see Amir al-Mu'mineen in this moment, she told Amir al-Mu'mineen that, oh, Abul Hasan, hurry back home, because Zainab, she is awoken from her sleep, and she's looking around, and she's looking for me, and she sees the place of her mother being empty. Zainab, abki ma ki talash hai, aur maan ki jaga khali hai. Zainab, she's looking for Fatima Zahra, but Fatima Zahra is nowhere to be found. The place of Fatima Zahra is empty. So she's asking Imam Ali to hasten back to comfort Zainab, salamullah alayha. But there will be a moment that Zainab, when she will again be left alone, and this will be in Karbala, when her dear brother Imam Hussein, that he will be martyred, her brother Abul Fadl Abbas will be martyred, her children will be martyred, the companions of Imam Hussein, the family of Ahlul Bayt will be martyred, and Zainab, she will be left alone at that moment. No one to come and to rush to her, to comfort her, but she will be the one that is running to gather the children and to comfort the children. She will be the one that will go to comfort Imam Zayn al-Abidin, who is sick on the plains of Karbala. على لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. اللهم بحق هذه المجلس الفاطمية اغفر ذنوبنا واستر عيوبنا واقضي حوائجنا واشفي مرضانا وارحم أمواتنا وعجل فرج مولانا صاحب العصر والزمان، واجعلنا من أعوانه وانصاره والمستشهدين بين يديه وتحت لواء بحق محمد وآله الطاهرين. And we give this salutation upon Fatima Zahra. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على الصديقة فاطمة الزكية حبيبة حبيبك ونبيك وأم أحبائك وأصفيائك التي انتجبتها وفضلتها واخترتها على نساء العالمين. اللهم كن الطالب لها ممن ظلمها واستخف بحقها، وكن الثائر اللهم بدم أولادها. اللهم وكما جعلتها أما لأئمة الهدى وحليلة صاحب اللواء والكريمة عند الملأ الأعلى، فصل عليها وعلى أمها صلاة تكرم بها وجه محمد نبيها صلى الله عليه وآله، وتقر بها أعين ذريتها، وأبلغهم عني في هذه الساعة أفضل التحية والسلام برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.